The wind cut through the Colorado mountains like a knife. Snow fell so thick that Jonas McKenna could barely see his horse's ears. He'd been riding for 2 days straight, and both he and his horse were done fighting the storm. Jonas was the kind of man people called a mountain man. 43 years old, with a thick beard and hands as rough as tree bark. He'd lived alone in these mountains for 15 years, trading furs and guiding folks through dangerous passes. He knew every trail, every cave, every place to find shelter when the weather turned mean. Right now, he needed shelter bad. Through the swirling snow, he spotted the dark shape of Henderson's trading post. The old log building sat in a clearing where 3 mountain trails met. It was the only place for 50 miles where a man could buy supplies, trade furs, or get a hot meal. But something was wrong. No smoke came from the chimney. No warm light glowed in the windows. The place looked dead. Jonas tied his horse under the covered area next to the building and pushed through the snow to the front door. Locked tight, he walked around to the back looking for another way in. The wind howled so loud he almost missed it, a sound, weak and small. He stopped walking and listened hard. There it was again, someone crying. Following the sound, Jonas pushed through snow that came up to his knees. Behind the trading post, he found what used to be a lean-to shelter. Now it was just broken wood and twisted metal, crushed under the weight of snow and ice. And underneath all that mess, he saw something that made his heart skip. A small hand, moving just a little. Jonas dropped to his knees and started digging through the snow with his bare hands. The cold bit at his fingers, but he didn't stop. Under a heavy wooden beam, he found her. A little girl, maybe 6 years old. Her dark hair was matted with snow, and her lips had turned blue from the cold. Her eyes were open, but just barely. When she saw him, she tried to speak. "I can't move," she whispered. Her voice was so quiet he had to lean close to hear her. "My legs, they won't move." The wooden beam had her pinned from the waist down. Jonas could see she'd been there for hours, maybe longer. How she was still alive, he didn't know. "Easy there, little one," Jonas said, his rough voice somehow gentle. "I'm gonna get you out of here." He studied the fallen beam. It was thick as a man's waist and heavy as a full-grown bull. But Jonas had spent years cutting trees and moving logs. He knew how to use leverage. Finding a strong piece of wood, he wedged it under the beam and pushed with all his strength. The beam moved just enough. The girl whimpered as feeling came back to her legs. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Jonas asked as he worked. "Lucy," she said through chattering teeth. "My family, they were here. We came 3 days ago, but when I woke up this morning..." Her voice trailed off. Jonas felt his jaw tighten. A family doesn't just disappear, not without reason. With one final push, he lifted the beam enough to pull Lucy free. Her legs were bruised and swollen, but she could move her toes. That was good. Meant no broken bones. He scooped her up in his arms. She weighed no more than a sack of grain. Her whole body shook from the cold. "Let's get you inside where it's warm," he said. But first, he had to break into the trading post. Jonas found a loose board near the back door and pried it off. The wood splintered with a loud crack. He squeezed through the gap and unlocked the door from inside. The trading post felt like a tomb. Cold and dark and empty. Jonas could see his breath in the air. But at least they were out of the wind. He carried Lucy to the big stone fireplace and set her down on a pile of old blankets someone had left behind. His hands worked quickly, building a fire from kindling and logs stacked nearby. Soon orange flames danced in the hearth, pushing back the cold. "Better?" he asked. Lucy nodded, but she was still shivering. Jonas took off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her tiny frame. The coat was so big it covered her completely. As the fire grew stronger, Jonas looked around the trading post. Shelves lined the walls, most of them empty now. Tables and chairs sat scattered around the room, and everywhere he saw signs that people had left in a hurry. A tin cup sat half full of coffee, now frozen solid. Playing cards were scattered on a table as if someone had dropped them mid-game. A woman's shawl hung on a peg by the door. But what really caught his attention was the pile of ash in the fireplace, cold as the stones around it. This fire had been dead for days. "Lucy," Jonas said, kneeling beside her, "tell me about your family. What were their names?" Lucy's eyes filled with tears. "Mama's name is Beth, Papa's Thomas. And my baby brother is called Timmy. He's only 2. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Papa said we were going to start fresh somewhere new. He said the mountains would be good for Mama's cough. Jonas nodded, but his mind was racing. A family traveling with a sick woman and a baby in winter? That didn't make sense unless they were running from something. Do you remember anything else about this morning? He asked gently. Lucy closed her eyes, thinking hard. I woke up because Timmy was crying. But when I looked around, they weren't there. I called for them, but nobody answered. Then I heard a loud crack and something heavy fell on me. Jonas looked at the girl's torn dress and the bruises on her arms. She'd been trapped under that beam for hours in the freezing cold. If he hadn't come along when he did, he pushed that thought away. What mattered now was keeping her warm and safe. Are you hungry? He asked. Lucy nodded. Jonas searched the trading post and found some hardtack biscuits and dried meat in his saddlebags. Not much, but it would do for now. He melted snow in a pot over the fire to make hot water for tea. As Lucy ate, color slowly returned to her cheeks. The fire crackled and popped, filling the room with warmth and light. Outside, the storm kept raging, but inside they were safe. Mister, Lucy said quietly, do you think my family will come back for me? Jonas looked at the little girl wrapped in his coat, her big eyes full of hope. His heart felt heavy as a stone. He'd seen enough abandoned campsites and empty cabins to know when people left for good, but he couldn't tell her that. Not yet. We'll figure it out come morning, he said. Right now you need to rest. As Lucy curled up by the fire, Jonas sat in a chair nearby, keeping watch. The wind howled outside like a wild animal, but the trading post held strong against the storm. He'd found her just in time. Another hour in that cold and she would have been gone forever. Now he had to decide what to do with her. And that was going to be harder than lifting any wooden beam. Jonas woke up before dawn to the sound of crackling wood. The fire had burned low during the night, but it was still alive. He'd been feeding it logs every few hours to keep Lucy warm. The little girl was still asleep, curled up like a kitten under his big coat. Her breathing was steady now, not the shallow gasps from yesterday. That was good. It meant her body was fighting off the cold. Outside, the wind had finally stopped howling. Jonas could see gray morning light creeping through the frost-covered windows. The storm was breaking. He added more wood to the fire and stepped outside to check on his horse. The animal had survived the night under the shelter, munching on hay Jonas had found in the trading post's barn. Smart horse, knew how to take care of itself. Jonas looked around the empty clearing. Fresh snow covered everything like a thick white blanket. No footprints, no wagon tracks, nothing to show that Lucy's family had ever been here. But Jonas was a tracker. He knew how to read signs most people missed. He walked in wide circles around the trading post, studying the ground. Under all that new snow, there had to be something. A clue about what happened to Lucy's family. Near the front of the building, he found it. The faint outline of wagon wheels almost hidden under the snow. Following the tracks, he saw where a wagon had sat for several days, then moved away toward the eastern trail. Jonas knelt down and brushed snow away with his hands. Horse droppings frozen solid, old enough to be from 3 days ago, just like Lucy said. So her family had been here. But why leave without her? When Jonas went back inside, Lucy was sitting up by the fire, rubbing her eyes. Her dark hair stuck up in all directions and there were tear tracks on her cheeks. Good morning, sweetheart, Jonas said softly. How are those legs feeling? Lucy wiggled her toes inside her worn-out shoes. They hurt, but I can move them. That's real good. Jonas sat down beside her. Lucy, I need to ask you some questions about your family. Can you do that for me? She nodded, but her lips started to quiver. Did your papa ever talk about owing money to anyone? Or being afraid of someone? Lucy thought for a moment. Papa was always worried about something. Mama would tell him not to talk about it in front of me and Timmy. But sometimes I heard them whispering at night. What kind of things did they whisper about? Bad men. Papa said there were bad men looking for us. That's why we had to leave our old house so fast. Mama cried a lot when we packed our things. Jonas felt his stomach tighten. He'd seen families running from debt collectors before. Desperate people who owed money to the wrong kind of folks. Men who didn't care about collecting from women and children. Did you see these bad men? He asked. No, but Papa was always looking over his shoulder. And he made us change our names. He said if anyone asked, I should say our last name was Miller, not Peterson. Peterson. That was their real name. Jonas filed that information away in his mind. Lucy, I found wagon tracks outside. Your family's wagon. It looks like they left heading east. Lucy's eyes lit up with hope. Then they're coming back. They probably just went to get supplies or find help. Jonas wished he could believe that. But families running from dangerous men don't leave their children behind to get supplies. They take everyone and run as far and fast as they can. Maybe, he said gently. But we need to be prepared for other possibilities too. What do you mean? Jonas chose his words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups have to make very hard choices. Choices that hurt their hearts. Your mama and papa love you very much, but they might have thought you'd be safer here than with them. Lucy's face crumpled. But I want to be with them. I don't care if it's dangerous. I know you do, sweetheart. I know. Jonas had no children of his own, but he remembered being 6 years old. Remembered how big and scary the world felt when you didn't understand what the grown-ups were doing. Are you going to leave me too? Lucy asked in a small voice. No, Jonas said without thinking. The word came out so fast it surprised him. No, I'm not going to leave you. Promise? Jonas looked at this little girl who'd been abandoned in a snowstorm and nearly died under a fallen beam. She had nobody left in the world except him, a rough mountain man who didn't know the first thing about raising children. I promise, he said. Lucy threw her thin arms around his neck and held on tight. Jonas patted her back awkwardly. He wasn't used to hugs or tears or taking care of anyone but himself. For the next 2 hours, Jonas took care of Lucy's immediate needs. He found a creek behind the trading post where he could wash her cuts and bruises with clean water. The cold made her gasp, but she didn't complain. He also searched the trading post more thoroughly. In the back room, he found a wooden crate hidden under some old canvas. Inside were Lucy's things: a small dress, a cornhusk doll, a picture drawn in crayon showing a family of 4, and at the bottom of the crate, wrapped in cloth, was a letter. Jonas unfolded the paper carefully. The handwriting was shaky, like someone wrote it in a hurry or while crying. To whoever finds our Lucy, it began. Her name is Lucy Peterson. She is 6 years old and the sweetest child who ever lived. We are her parents, Thomas and Beth Peterson. We love her more than life itself, but we cannot keep her safe anymore. Bad men are chasing us and they will hurt her if they find us together. Please take care of our baby girl. Please give her the life we cannot. There is a silver locket in her dress pocket. It belonged to her grandmother. Tell her we will always love her. Tell her we are sorry. It was signed Beth Peterson in letters that looked like they were written through tears. Jonas folded the letter and put it in his shirt pocket. Lucy didn't need to see this, not yet. Maybe not ever. When he came back to the main room, Lucy was playing with her cornhusk doll by the fire. She looked so small and alone, but she was trying to be brave. Lucy, Jonas said, we need to talk about what happens next. She looked up at him with those big, trusting eyes. I don't know much about taking care of little girls, he admitted. I've been living by myself in these mountains for a long time. But I meant what I said. I'm not going to leave you, sir. What will we do? Jonas thought about it. He had a cabin up in the high country, but it was no place for a child. Too cold, too isolated, too dangerous. Lucy needed to be around people. She needed to go to school and have friends and live like a normal little girl. First, we're going to go to the nearest town, he said. Place called Cedar Falls, about a day's ride from here. We'll get you some proper clothes and food. Then we'll figure out the rest. Will you stay with me? Jonas looked at Lucy's hopeful face and felt something shift inside his chest, something he hadn't felt in 15 years. Yeah, sweetheart, he said. I'll stay with you. Outside, the sun was finally breaking through the clouds. The storm was over. It was time to start their journey together. Jonas packed his few belongings and helped Lucy onto his horse. She sat in front of him, wrapped in his coat as they rode away from the trading post. Behind them, the empty building grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the trees. Ahead of them lay the unknown, but for the first time since he'd found her, Lucy was smiling. They'd only been riding for an hour when the clouds rolled back in. Dark and heavy like a wool blanket being pulled across the sky. Jonas felt the temperature drop and knew what was coming. Another storm. Bigger than the last one. We need to turn back, he told Lucy, who was sitting in front of him on the horse. This weather's about to get nasty again. Lucy looked up at the gray sky. How can you tell? See how the trees are bending? And smell that in the air? That's snow coming. A lot of it. They made it back to the trading post just as the first flakes started falling. By the time Jonas got his horse settled in the barn, the wind was picking up again. Looks like we're stuck here for a while longer, he said, carrying Lucy inside. The fire had died down to glowing coals, but Jonas had it blazing again in no time. Outside, the wind began to howl like it had something personal against the little log building. Lucy sat on the floor, playing with her corn-husk doll. But Jonas could see she was worried about something. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" he asked. "Do you think the storm will keep my family from coming back?" Jonas's heart ached for her. She still believed they were coming back. Still hoped every sound outside might be their wagon returning. "Lucy," he said gently, "sometimes things happen that are bigger than what we want. Sometimes grown-ups have to make choices that don't make sense to children. But why would they leave me? Did I do something wrong?" "No." Jonas knelt down beside her. "You didn't do anything wrong. Not one single thing. Your parents love you very much. But sometimes love means doing things that hurt if it keeps someone safe." Lucy was quiet for a long moment. "Are you going to tell me they're not coming back?" Jonas was surprised by her question. For a 6-year-old, Lucy was pretty smart. "I think," he said carefully, "that your parents wanted you to be safe more than anything else in the world, and maybe they thought leaving you here was the only way to keep you safe." Tears started rolling down Lucy's cheeks, not the loud crying of a child throwing a fit, but the quiet tears of someone who's starting to understand something terrible. "I want my mama," she whispered. Jonas didn't know what to say to that. He'd never been good with words, especially when it came to feelings. So instead, he just sat down beside her and let her cry. After a while, Lucy wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Will you tell me about where you live?" Jonas was grateful for the change of subject. "Up in the high mountains. I've got a little cabin next to a stream that runs year-round. In the summer, the wildflowers grow so thick you can't walk without stepping on them. Do you have neighbors?" "The closest neighbor is a day's ride away. It's just me and the animals. Deer, elk, sometimes a black bear wandering through. They don't bother me and I don't bother them." "Don't you get lonely?" That was a question Jonas had never really thought about. He'd been alone for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone to talk to. "I guess I got used to it," he said. "After my wife and daughter died, I didn't much want to be around people anymore." Lucy's eyes went wide. "You had a family?" Jonas nodded. "A long time ago. My wife was named Mary and my little girl was called Annie. She was about your age when the cholera took them both." "What's cholera?" "A sickness. It spreads fast and there's no cure for it. One day they were fine, and 3 days later they were gone." Lucy was quiet for a moment. "Is that why you live alone in the mountains?" "Yeah. I couldn't stand being in town anymore, seeing all the places we used to go together. So I packed up and headed for the high country." "Do you miss them?" "Every day," Jonas said. "But the hurt's not as sharp as it used to be. Time has a way of smoothing out the rough edges." Lucy scooted closer to him. "I think you're lonely even if you don't know it." Jonas looked down at this wise little girl and realized she might be right. He'd told himself he preferred being alone, but maybe he'd just been afraid of losing someone again. The storm raged for 3 days. 3 long days of wind and snow and cold that seeped through every crack in the old building. Jonas kept the fire going and rationed their food carefully. He melted snow for drinking water and told Lucy stories to keep her mind off their situation. He told her about the time he tracked a wounded grizzly bear for 2 days through a blizzard. About the summer he got lost in a box canyon and had to climb a 100-foot cliff to get out. About the Native American chief who taught him to read animal tracks and predict weather. Lucy listened to every word, her eyes bright with interest. She asked good questions too. Smart questions that showed she was really thinking about what he was telling her. On the second night, Lucy had a nightmare. She woke up crying, calling for her mama. Jonas sat beside her in the dark, patting her back until she fell asleep again. "I dreamed they were calling for me," she whispered, "but I couldn't find them." "It was just a dream, sweetheart. You're safe here with me. Promise you won't disappear while I'm sleeping?" "I promise." By the 3rd day, their food was running low. Jonas had enough jerky and hardtack for maybe 1 more day, and that was stretching it thin. He'd have to hunt soon, but he couldn't leave Lucy alone. That afternoon, the wind finally stopped. The silence felt strange after 3 days of constant noise. Jonas looked out the window and saw blue sky peeking through the clouds. "Storm's breaking," he announced. "We'll be able to leave tomorrow." Lucy didn't look as excited as he'd expected. "Where will we go?" "Cedar Falls, like I said. It's a good town. Friendly people. You'll like it there." "Will I have to live with strangers?" Jonas paused. He'd been thinking about that question for 3 days. "I don't know yet. We'll figure it out together." That night, as Lucy slept by the fire, Jonas sat in a chair keeping watch. He studied her small face in the firelight and felt something he hadn't felt in 15 years. Responsibility. Not just for keeping someone alive, but for keeping them happy. For making sure they felt loved and wanted and safe. It scared him more than any grizzly bear or mountain storm ever had. But it also made him feel something else, something he'd almost forgotten about. Purpose. For 15 years he'd been just surviving, getting by day to day with no real reason to care about tomorrow. Now suddenly tomorrow mattered. Tomorrow mattered because Lucy would be there. When morning came, the sun was shining bright on fresh snow. The world looked clean and new, like someone had wiped the slate completely clean. Jonas packed their few belongings and got his horse ready. Lucy sat quietly on a stump watching him work. "You ready for this?" he asked. Lucy stood up and took his hand. Her small fingers felt warm and trusting in his big, rough palm. "I'm ready," she said. But as they rode away from the trading post, Jonas wasn't sure either of them really knew what they were getting ready for. All he knew was that everything had changed. 3 days ago, he'd been a man with no family and no responsibilities. Now he was something else entirely. He was all this little girl had left in the world, and somehow she'd become all he had too. The ride to Cedar Falls took most of the day. Lucy sat in front of Jonas on his horse wrapped in his thick coat, asking questions about everything she saw. Why did some trees lose their leaves while others stayed green? How did animals survive in the winter? Where did the creeks go when they disappeared into the ground? Jonas found himself enjoying her curiosity. It had been years since he'd really looked at the world around him. Through Lucy's eyes, everything seemed new again. But as they got closer to town, Jonas felt a knot forming in his stomach. Soon he'd have to make some hard decisions about Lucy's future. And first, he needed to know more about her past. Cedar Falls was a small mountain town with one main street lined with wooden buildings. A general store, a blacksmith shop, a church, and a saloon. Maybe 200 people lived there, mostly miners and loggers and their families. Jonas rode straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Williams was a good man who'd helped Jonas out of a few scrapes over the years. If anyone would know how to handle Lucy's situation, it would be him. "Jonas McKenna," Sheriff Williams called out as they approached. "Haven't seen you in town for months." "Who's the little lady?" Jonas helped Lucy down from the horse. "Sheriff, this is Lucy. I found her at Henderson's trading post, trapped under some fallen timber. Her family's missing." Sheriff Williams crouched down to Lucy's level. He was a big man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. "Well, hello there, Lucy. I'm Sheriff Williams. You can call me Sheriff Tom if you want." Lucy hid behind Jonas's leg, suddenly shy. "It's okay, sweetheart," Jonas said. "Sheriff Tom is a friend of mine. He's going to help us figure out what happened to your family." Inside the sheriff's office, Jonas told the whole story, while Lucy sat quietly in a chair, swinging her legs. Sheriff Williams listened carefully, taking notes in a small book. "Peterson family," he repeated when Jonas finished. "I'll send some telegrams to other towns, see if anyone's seen them." "What did they look like?" Lucy described her parents and baby brother in detail. Her father was tall and thin with brown hair. Her mother was small and pretty but had been coughing a lot. Baby Timmy had blonde hair and blue eyes. "And they were traveling in a wagon?" Sheriff Williams asked. Lucy nodded. "Papa said it had everything we owned in the whole world." After they finished at the sheriff's office, Jonas took Lucy to the general store to buy her some clothes. The store owner, Mrs. Patterson, was a motherly woman who took one look at Lucy's torn dress and immediately started fussing over her. "Oh, you poor dear. Look at you, half frozen and dressed in rags. Jonas McKenna, what have you gotten yourself into?" "Found her abandoned up at the trading post," Jonas explained. "She needs proper clothes and shoes." Mrs. Patterson measured Lucy and picked out a warm wool dress, thick stockings, and sturdy boots. She also insisted on a heavy coat and a knitted hat. "Growing girl needs good clothes," she said, wrapping everything up, "especially in this weather." While Mrs. Patterson worked, Jonas noticed Lucy staring at a display of peppermint sticks near the counter. Without saying anything, he bought her one. Her face lit up with the first real smile he'd seen since finding her. They spent the night at the town's small hotel. Jonas got 2 rooms connected by a door so Lucy wouldn't be scared. But around midnight, he heard quiet crying through the wall. He knocked softly on her door. "Lucy, you okay?" "I can't sleep," came her muffled voice. Jonas found her sitting by the window looking out at the dark street. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "I keep thinking I see Papa's wagon coming down the street, but it's just shadows." Jonas sat down beside her. He'd been dreading this conversation, but it was time. "Lucy, I need to tell you something. Something I found at the trading post." He pulled the letter from his shirt pocket. "Your mama left this for whoever found you." Lucy's eyes went wide. "Mama wrote me a letter?" "She did. But it's not the kind of letter you might expect." Jonas read the letter out loud, slowly and gently. With each word, Lucy's face changed. Hope faded, replaced by understanding, then sadness, then something that looked almost like relief. When he finished, Lucy was quiet for a long time. "So they're not coming back," she finally said. It wasn't a question. "No, sweetheart. They're not coming back. But they didn't leave me because they didn't want me. No, they left you because they love you. They thought it was the only way to keep you safe." Lucy reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a small silver locket. Jonas had noticed it before but hadn't asked about it. She opened it, and inside was a tiny picture of a woman who looked just like Lucy. "This was my grandmama's," Lucy said. "Mama said it would always remind me that I come from strong women." She was right about that. "You're pretty strong yourself." Lucy closed the locket and held it tight in her small fist. "What happens to me now?" That was the question Jonas had been asking himself all day. "Well, Sheriff Tom is looking for any relatives you might have. Aunts or uncles or grandparents who could take care of you. What if there aren't any? Then we'll find you a good family here in town. People who will love you and take care of you." Lucy was quiet again. "What about you? What about me? Where will you go?" Jonas hadn't really thought about that. For 15 years, he'd just wandered from place to place, following the seasons and the work. But now the idea of leaving Lucy with strangers and going back to his lonely cabin didn't feel right. "I don't know," he admitted. "I haven't figured that part out yet. Could I stay with you?" The question hit Jonas like a punch to the chest. "Lucy, I live way up in the mountains. It's no place for a little girl. You need to be in town where you can go to school and make friends. But I like being with you. You saved me. You take care of me. You tell good stories." Jonas felt his throat tighten. "Sweetheart, I don't know anything about raising children. You need a real family. A mama and papa who know how to do things right." "My real mama and papa left me in a snowstorm," Lucy said quietly. "You found me and kept me warm and safe. That seems pretty real to me." Jonas didn't know what to say to that. This little girl had already figured out something it had taken him 3 days to understand. "Let me think about it," he said finally. "There's a lot to consider." Lucy smiled for the second time that day. "Okay, but Jonas, yeah? I hope you think yes." The next morning, Sheriff Williams had news. He'd received a telegram from a town 50 miles east. A family matching the Petersons' description had passed through 4 days ago, moving fast and looking over their shoulders. They'd bought supplies and kept asking about the best route to Denver. "Sounds like they're still running from something," the sheriff said, or someone. He'd also made inquiries about Lucy's relatives. The Peterson family had come from Missouri originally, but there was no record of any family members still living there. "Far as I can tell," Sheriff Williams said, "this little girl has nobody left in the world except whoever's willing to take her in." That afternoon, Jonas and Lucy sat on the hotel's front porch, watching people go about their daily business. Jonas was supposed to be thinking about Lucy's future, but mostly he was thinking about how quiet his cabin would feel without her chatter and questions. "Jonas," Lucy said suddenly, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "When your wife and daughter died, did you ever think about getting another family?" Jonas was quiet for a long moment. "No, I thought if you lost people you loved, the best thing was to never love anyone again. That way it couldn't hurt so much. But that means you'd be lonely forever. I guess I thought lonely was better than hurt." Lucy swung her legs and thought about that. Maybe lonely and hurt feel the same after a while. Jonas looked at this 6-year-old girl who somehow understood things that had taken him 15 years to figure out. "You might be right about that," he said. That night, Jonas lay awake staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, he'd have to start looking for a family to take Lucy in. There were good people in Cedar Falls who might want to adopt a little girl. But every time he thought about riding away and leaving her with strangers, his chest felt tight. Maybe Lucy was right. Maybe being lonely and being hurt did feel the same after a while. and maybe it was time to try something different. Jonas spent the next morning walking around Cedar Falls, trying to work up the courage to ask people about adopting Lucy. It should have been simple. Find a nice family with room for one more child, hand Lucy over and ride back to his mountain cabin, get back to his old life. But every time he started to knock on someone's door, he found an excuse to walk away instead. The Hendersons had 4 children already. Too crowded. The Millers were getting old. Too tired for a young child. The Johnsons seemed nice enough, but their house was right next to the saloon. Too noisy. By noon, Jonas realized he was making excuses. The truth was he didn't want to give Lucy away, but wanting something and being able to provide it were 2 different things. Any luck finding families? Sheriff Williams asked when Jonas stopped by his office. Still looking, Jonas said. Want to make sure it's the right fit. Sheriff Williams studied Jonas's face. You know, there's another option we haven't talked about. What's that? You could keep her yourself. Jonas shook his head. I told you I live way up in the mountains. No place for a child. So move. The words hung in the air between them. Jonas hadn't even considered that possibility. I can't just pick up and move to town, Jonas said. I don't know how to live around people anymore. And I sure don't know how to raise a little girl. Seems to me you've been doing just fine so far, Sheriff Williams said. That little girl thinks the sun rises and sets on you. And I've never seen you care about anything the way you care about her. Caring isn't enough. She needs stability, education, a proper home. Jonas, let me ask you something. In all your years wandering these mountains, have you ever been happy? The question caught Jonas off guard. Happy? I guess I never really thought about it. Well, think about it now. Have you been happy? Jonas considered this. Happy seemed like too strong a word for what he'd felt the last 15 years. Content maybe? Peaceful sometimes. But happy? No, he admitted. I don't think I have been. But you've been happy these last few days with Lucy? Jonas wanted to argue. But he couldn't. The last few days, even with all the worry and uncertainty, had felt different. Better. Like his life had color again instead of just gray. She deserves better than an old mountain man who doesn't know what he's doing. Jonas said. Maybe. Or maybe she deserves someone who loves her enough to figure it out as he goes. That afternoon, Jonas found Lucy sitting by the creek behind the hotel. She was throwing pebbles into the water and watching the ripples spread out in circles. What you thinking about? Jonas asked, sitting down beside her. My mama used to say that when you throw a stone in water, the circles go on forever, even after you can't see them anymore. Your mama sounds like a smart woman. She was. Lucy threw another pebble. Jonas, have you decided what's going to happen to me? Jonas had planned to ease into this conversation, but Lucy had never been one to avoid difficult subjects. I've been thinking about it a lot, he said. There are some good families in town who might want to take you in. Lucy nodded but didn't look at him. The Hendersons seem nice, Mrs. Henderson. Gave me a cookie yesterday. They do seem nice. And the Pattersons at the general store. Mrs. Patterson said I was welcome, anytime. That's true too. Lucy was quiet for a moment. But you don't want to give me to them, do you? Jonas looked at this perceptive little girl and decided she deserved honesty. No, I don't want to give you to anyone. Then why are you going to? Because wanting something and being able to provide it are different things. You need more than I can give you. Lucy finally looked at him. What do I need that you can't give me? A real home, school, friends your own age. A woman's influence and stability. What if we made a real home together? What if I went to school here in town? What if you learned about taking care of children the same way you learned about tracking animals? Jonas felt his chest tighten. Lucy, it's not that simple. Why not? Because Jonas struggled for words. Because I failed before. I couldn't protect my wife and daughter from the cholera. What if I can't protect you either? Lucy scooted closer to him. The cholera wasn't your fault. You can't fight sickness with a gun or a knife. But you saved me from freezing to death. You kept me warm and fed and safe. You're protecting me right now. But what if something happens to me? Then you'd be alone again. What if something happens to any family I live with? What if the Hendersons get cholera? What if the Pattersons' store burns down? Bad things can happen anywhere, Jonas. That doesn't mean we should be too scared to love people. Jonas stared at the creek, watching the water flow over the rocks. This 6-year-old girl was making more sense than he was. You really want to stay with me? He asked. More than anything. even if it means living different than other children. I've never lived like other children anyway. My family was always moving, always hiding. At least with you, I wouldn't have to hide anymore. That evening, Jonas had a long talk with Sheriff Williams about the practical aspects of keeping Lucy. The sheriff knew a judge who could help with the legal papers. There was a good school in town where Lucy could get an education, and there were plenty of women in Cedar Falls who would be happy to help Jonas learn about raising a girl. You sure about this? Sheriff Williams asked. It's a big responsibility. I'm terrified, Jonas admitted. But Lucy's right. Being scared isn't a good enough reason not to try. The next morning, Jonas sat Lucy down for another serious conversation. I've been thinking about what you said, he began, about making a home together. Lucy's eyes lit up with hope. If we're going to do this, there have to be some changes. I can't live up in the high country anymore. We'd need to find a place closer to town so you can go to school. Okay. And I don't know anything about girl things. Hair ribbons and proper manners and, well, girl things. We'd need help from some of the ladies in town. Mrs. Patterson already offered to teach me to sew. And there'd be rules. School every day. Chores around the house. No wandering off without telling me where you're going. Lucy nodded eagerly. I'll do whatever you say. Jonas took a deep breath. Then I guess we're going to figure this out together. Lucy launched herself into his arms, nearly knocking him off his chair. Really? You really mean it? I really mean it. Jonas hugged her back, surprised by how right it felt. We're family now, Lucy, for better or worse. For better, Lucy said firmly. Definitely for better. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Jonas sold some of his furs to get money for a house. He found a small cabin on the edge of town, close enough to walk to school but far enough out to have some privacy. It needed work, but Jonas was good with his hands. Mrs. Patterson helped them pick out furniture and household supplies. Sheriff Williams introduced Jonas to the schoolteacher, Miss Roberts, who was excited about having a new student. The town doctor, Dr. Hayes, checked Lucy over and declared her perfectly healthy despite her ordeal. Everyone in Cedar Falls seemed happy to help. Jonas had always thought of himself as an outsider, but now he realized the town had been waiting for him to join the community all along. On their last night at the hotel, Lucy sat on her bed while Jonas packed their few belongings. Jonas, she said quietly, I know you're scared about this. A little, he admitted. Me too. But I think scared can be good sometimes. It means you care enough to worry about doing things right. Jonas looked at this wise little girl and wondered how he'd gotten so lucky. He'd thought he was saving her, but maybe she was saving him too. You know what I think? Jonas said. What? I think your mama was right about those ripples in the water. Sometimes one small thing changes everything that comes after. Lucy smiled. Like you finding me at the trading post? Like me finding you at the trading post. The next morning, they moved into their new home. It was small and simple, but it was theirs. Jonas had never owned a house before. For 15 years, he'd just camped wherever night found him. But as he watched Lucy arrange her corn-husk doll on the shelf beside her new bed, he knew he'd made the right choice. They were family now, and family meant having a place to belong. Living in town turned out to be harder than Jonas expected. After 15 years in the mountains, he'd forgotten how noisy civilization could be. Dogs barking, children playing, wagons rolling down the street at all hours. Some nights he lay awake wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake. But then Lucy would laugh at something, or ask him to help with her schoolwork, or curl up beside him while he read aloud from one of her books, and he'd remember why he was doing this. Lucy took to town life like a duck to water. On her first day of school, she was nervous, but by the end of the week, she was chattering about her new friends and teacher. Miss Roberts told Jonas that Lucy was bright as a penny and eager to learn everything. She's behind in some subjects, Miss Roberts explained. Her family moved around a lot, so her education has gaps, but she's working hard to catch up. Jonas felt proud watching Lucy walk to school each morning with her lunch pail and slateboard. She looked like any other child in town, but he knew how far she'd come from that terrified little girl trapped under the beam. Mrs. Patterson had become like a grandmother to Lucy, teaching her to cook and sew and braid her hair properly. Dr. Hayes checked on her regularly, amazed by how well she'd recovered from her ordeal. Sheriff Williams always had a kind word, and sometimes brought her peppermint sticks from the general store. But Jonas struggled with the social aspects of town life. People were friendly enough, but he felt awkward at church gatherings and community events. He was used to solving problems with his hands and his wits, not with conversation and politeness. One evening, about a month after they'd settled in, Lucy found Jonas sitting on their front porch looking troubled. "What's wrong?" she asked, climbing onto his lap. "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. Just thinking." "About what?" Jonas wasn't sure how to explain his doubts to a 7-year-old. "Sometimes I wonder if you might be happier with a different family. People who know more about living in town." Lucy was quiet for a moment. "Do you want me to live with a different family?" "No, but this isn't about what I want. It's about what's best for you." "Then why don't you ask me what I think is best for me?" Jonas smiled despite his worries. "Okay, what do you think is best for you?" "Staying with you. Learning things together. Being a family. Even if I don't always know the right thing to do, nobody always knows the right thing to do. Mrs. Patterson told me her first batch of biscuits turned out hard as rocks. Miss Roberts said she cried after her first day teaching because she was so scared, but they figured it out. And you think we can figure it out too? I know we can." That weekend, Jonas decided to try something new. The town was having a harvest festival, and instead of finding an excuse to stay home, he took Lucy to join the celebration. At first, he felt out of place among all the families and couples. But Lucy ran off to play with her school friends, and soon other parents were talking to him about children and weather and everyday things. Mrs. Henderson mentioned that her oldest boy was interested in learning to track animals. Could Jonas maybe teach him sometime? Mr. Johnson asked if Jonas knew anything about building a smokehouse for preserving meat. Dr. Hayes wondered if Jonas might help him collect medicinal plants from the high country. Slowly, Jonas realized that people weren't just being polite. They actually valued his knowledge and experience. He had things to offer this community that went beyond just fitting in. When it came time for the dance, Jonas panicked. He hadn't danced since his wedding 15 years ago, but Lucy grabbed his hands and pulled him onto the makeshift dance floor. "I don't know how to dance anymore," he protested. "Then we'll make it up as we go," Lucy said, and started spinning around with his hands in hers. Soon they were both laughing as they stumbled through something that barely resembled dancing. Other people smiled and clapped, and Jonas realized that nobody expected him to be perfect. They just wanted him to participate. After the festival, things got easier. Jonas started helping other townspeople with projects that needed his mountain skills. He taught the older children how to read animal tracks and predict weather. He helped families prepare for winter by showing them how to preserve food and insulate their homes. In return, the townspeople helped him learn about raising Lucy. Mrs. Patterson showed him how to fix Lucy's hair for special occasions. Dr. Hayes explained what to do when children got sick. Sheriff Williams taught him about setting boundaries and discipline, though Jonas found that Lucy rarely needed much correction. But the biggest change came when winter arrived again. Jonas had been dreading it, remembering how isolated his mountain cabin became when the snow fell deep. But winter in town was different. There were community gatherings where people shared food and stories. Christmas preparations that brought everyone together. Ice skating on the frozen pond and sledding parties for the children. Lucy thrived during the winter months. She'd grown taller and stronger, and her reading had improved so much that she was catching up to children who'd been in school since they were 5. One snowy evening in January, almost a year since Jonas had found her, Lucy was doing her homework at the kitchen table while Jonas worked on repairing a neighbor's broken trap. "Jonas," Lucy said without looking up from her slate. "Are you happy?" Jonas paused in his work. Sheriff Williams had asked him the same question a year ago, and he'd said no. Now he considered it carefully. "Yeah," he said, surprising himself. "I think I am happy." "Good. Because I am too. Even though we're not like other families." Lucy looked up from her homework. "We're exactly like other families. We take care of each other. We eat dinner together. You help me with my lessons and I help you remember to comb your hair before church." Jonas laughed. "When did you get so smart?" "I was always smart. I just needed someone to notice." That night, as Jonas tucked Lucy into bed, she asked him a question that caught him off guard. "Do you think my first parents are okay? Wherever they are?" Jonas had wondered the same thing many times. "I hope so, sweetheart. I hope they found somewhere safe to live." "Do you think they wonder about me?" "Every day. I'm sure they think about you every day." Lucy was quiet for a moment. "I still miss them sometimes." Is that okay? Of course it's okay. Missing people means you loved them. That's never wrong. But I love you too. And I love our life here. Does that mean I'm forgetting them? Jonas sat on the edge of her bed. Lucy, love isn't like a pie where you only have so much to go around. Love grows bigger the more you use it. Loving me doesn't mean you loved them less, and loving them doesn't mean you love me less. So I can miss them and still be happy with you? Absolutely. Lucy smiled and snuggled deeper under her quilts. Good, because I like having room in my heart for everyone. As Jonas blew out the lamp and headed to his own room, he thought about what Lucy had said. For 15 years he'd tried to make his heart smaller, thinking it would hurt less. But Lucy had shown him that hearts are meant to grow, not shrink. He'd found more than just a daughter when he rescued her from that trading post. He'd found his way back to being human again, and tomorrow they'd keep building their life together one day at a time. As spring arrived in Cedar Falls, Jonas realized that he and Lucy had been together for over a year. She was 8 now, tall for her age and confident in ways that would have been impossible when he first found her. Her dark hair had grown long enough for proper braids, and she'd lost that hollow, frightened look in her eyes. The town had accepted them completely. People no longer saw them as the strange mountain man and his adopted daughter. They were just Jonas and Lucy McKenna, part of the community. But Jonas knew their situation wasn't entirely secure. Legally, Lucy was still just a child he was caring for. There were no official papers making him her guardian. Sheriff Williams had been pushing him to make it official through the courts. What if something happens to you? The sheriff asked one morning. Lucy needs legal protection. She needs to know she belongs somewhere. Jonas had been putting off the legal paperwork, partly because he didn't trust lawyers and courts, but mostly because he was afraid. What if some judge decided he wasn't fit to raise Lucy? What if they found relatives who wanted to claim her? But Lucy deserved security. She deserved to know that no one could ever take her away from the home they'd built together. That afternoon, Jonas sat Lucy down for a serious conversation. Lucy, we need to talk about making our family official in the eyes of the law. Lucy looked confused. Aren't we already a family? We are. But the government doesn't know that yet. There are papers we need to sign so that everyone knows you're my daughter and I'm your father. Legal papers? That's right. It means if anything ever happened to me, you'd be taken care of. And it means no one can ever say you don't belong with me. Lucy was quiet for a moment. Would I have to change my name? Jonas hadn't thought about that. Do you want to change your name? I like being Lucy Peterson. It connects me to my first family. But I also like being part of your family. What if you kept Peterson as your middle name? Lucy Peterson McKenna? Lucy's face lit up. Could I really do that? I don't see why not. That way you'd carry both families with you. The legal process took several weeks. Judge Morrison was a fair man who interviewed both Jonas and Lucy separately. He talked to people in town about how they were doing as a family. He even visited their home to see how they lived. During the judge's visit, Lucy showed him her room, her schoolwork, and her corn-husk doll. She talked about helping Jonas with his work and learning to cook from Mrs. Patterson. She answered all his questions honestly and without fear. Mr. McKenna, Judge Morrison said afterward, I've seen a lot of adoption cases. Some work out, some don't. But I've never seen a child more clearly loved or better cared for than Lucy. The legal adoption will be approved. On the day the papers were signed, the whole town seemed to celebrate with them. Mrs. Patterson baked a special cake. Sheriff Williams organized a small party at the church. Even the children from Lucy's school came to congratulate her. Now it's official, Lucy said, holding the adoption papers carefully. I'm really your daughter. You were really my daughter the moment I pulled you out from under that beam, Jonas said. These papers just make it so everyone else knows it too. That summer, Jonas decided to teach Lucy some of the mountain skills that had kept him alive for so many years. Not because he wanted her to live in the wilderness, but because he wanted her to be strong and capable, no matter what life threw at her. He taught her to read weather signs and animal tracks. He showed her which plants were safe to eat and which ones were poison. He taught her to fish and to build a proper fire that would burn all night. Lucy absorbed everything eagerly. She had good instincts and steady hands. More importantly, she wasn't afraid to try new things or make mistakes. You're a natural, Jonas told her after she successfully caught her first trout. Your real parents would be proud. All 3 of them, Lucy said, grinning. All 3 of them. My first mama and papa and you. Jonas felt his throat tighten with emotion. That's right, all three of them. One evening in late summer, Jonas and Lucy were sitting on their porch watching the sunset when Lucy asked a question that had been on her mind. Jonas, do you ever wish you could go back to living alone in the mountains? Jonas considered this carefully. Do you know what I miss most about the mountains? The quiet. The feeling that I was exactly where I belonged. That I was doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing. Jonas looked at Lucy. I still feel that way. Just in a different place, you mean here? With me? I mean anywhere with you. Home isn't a place, Lucy, it's people. You're my home now. Lucy smiled and leaned against his shoulder. You're my home too. As autumn arrived, Lucy started her third year of school. She was reading at a level far beyond her age and had developed a particular love for geography. She could point to any state on the map and tell you about its major cities and industries. Miss Roberts suggested that Lucy might be ready to skip ahead a grade, but Jonas wasn't sure. Lucy was already younger than most of her classmates. Did she need the extra challenge, or was it better to let her be a child? What do you think? He asked Lucy. I like learning new things, she said, but I also like my friends. Could I maybe do some harder lessons but stay with my class? Miss Roberts agreed to give Lucy additional assignments while keeping her with children her own age. It was another example of how the town worked together to support both of them. That winter, Jonas made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He decided to run for town council. You want to be in politics? Sheriff Williams asked, laughing. The man who used to hide in the mountains when supply wagons came through? I want to help make decisions about Lucy's future, Jonas said. About the school. About what kind of town we're building for all our children. The campaign was simple. Jonas visited every family in Cedar Falls and listened to their concerns. He talked about practical things like improving the roads and expanding the school. He didn't make grand speeches or promises he couldn't keep. On election day, Jonas won by a wide margin. Lucy was so proud she wore her best dress to the victory celebration. My papa is going to help run the whole town, she told anyone who would listen. As they walked home that night, Lucy slipped her hand into Jonas's. Are you nervous about being on the town council? She asked, a little. But I've learned something important from you. What's that? Being scared isn't a good reason not to try. Sometimes the things that scare us are exactly the things we need to do. Lucy squeezed his hand. That's what families do. They help each other be brave. Looking back, Jonas could hardly believe how much his life had changed. 3 years ago, he'd been a lonely man living in a mountain cabin, convinced that caring about people only led to pain. Now he had a daughter who challenged him every day to be better. He had a place in the community and responsibilities that mattered. Most importantly, he had hope. Every morning brought new possibilities instead of just another day to get through. As they reached their front door, Lucy turned to him with a serious expression. Jonas, do you think other people could be as happy as we are? What do you mean? Other people who are lonely or scared. Do you think they could find families too? Jonas thought about all the people he'd met over the years who seemed lost or disconnected. Maybe, if they're brave enough to try. Then maybe that's what we should do next. Help other people find their families. Jonas smiled at his daughter's big heart and generous spirit. Maybe it is, sweetheart. Maybe it is. 2 years had passed since Jonas officially adopted Lucy, and life in Cedar Falls had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Lucy was now 10 years old, bright and confident, helping Jonas with his town council duties and excelling in school. Their little house had become a gathering place for neighbors and friends, and Jonas could hardly remember what it felt like to live alone. Then, on a cold February morning, everything changed. Sheriff Williams knocked on their door just as Jonas and Lucy were finishing breakfast. His face was serious, and he held an official-looking envelope in his hand. Jonas, we need to talk, he said. Lucy, why don't you go get ready for school? Lucy looked between the two men, sensing something important was happening, but she obediently gathered her books and kissed Jonas goodbye. What's this about, Tom? Jonas asked when they were alone. Sheriff Williams handed him the envelope. This came on yesterday's stage. It's from a lawyer in Boston. Says he represents someone claiming to be Lucy's aunt. Jonas felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Her aunt? Lucy's mother had a sister named Catherine Walsh. She's been searching for Lucy since she heard about her parents' deaths. The lawyer says she wants to claim custody. Jonas sank into a chair, the letter trembling in his hands. He'd always known this day might come, but he'd prayed it never would. The letter was formal and cold, written in legal language that made Jonas's head spin. But the message was clear. Catherine Walsh was Lucy's closest living relative, and she wanted to take Lucy to Boston to live with her wealthy family. "What are my rights here?" Jonas asked. "You have legal adoption papers," Sheriff Williams said. "That counts for something. But blood relatives have strong claims, especially when they can provide financial advantages." "Financial advantages? Jonas, this woman is married to a successful businessman. They have a big house, servants, money for the finest education. They can give Lucy things you never could." Jonas felt sick. "What does Lucy want?" "That's what the judge will have to decide. He'll interview her, look at her living situation, consider what's best for her future." That evening, Jonas had to tell Lucy about the letter. She listened quietly, her face growing paler with each word. "So my mama's sister wants to take me away?" she asked. "She wants to give you a home with your blood family. She says you'd have opportunities in Boston that you can't have here." Lucy was quiet for a long time. "Do you want me to go?" "No," Jonas said immediately. "I want you to stay here with me forever. But this isn't about what I want. It's about what's best for you. What if I don't want to go? Then we'll fight it. But Lucy, you need to understand what you'd be giving up. This woman can give you things I never could. Fine clothes, the best schools, a chance to see the world." Lucy stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered street where she'd played and learned and grown up. "Jonas, can I ask you something? Anything. When you found me at the trading post, was I rich?" "No, sweetheart. You had nothing but the clothes on your back. Was I educated?" "No, you could barely read. Did I have fine things?" "No." Lucy turned around to face him. "But was I happy?" Jonas thought about the frightened, abandoned little girl he'd pulled from under that beam. "No, you weren't happy at all. And now? Now you're the happiest child I know. So why would having rich relatives make me happier than being with someone who loves me?" Jonas felt tears sting his eyes. "Because maybe love isn't enough. Maybe you deserve more than just love." Lucy walked over and climbed onto his lap. Even though she was getting too big for such things, "Jonas, do you remember what you told me about love growing bigger the more you use it?" "I remember." "Well, I think happiness works the same way. I'm happy because I'm loved and because I love you back. I'm happy because I have friends in school and a home where I belong. Money can't buy those things." The lawyer, Mr. Blackwood, arrived 3 days later on the afternoon stage. He was a thin, sharp-faced man in an expensive suit who looked around Cedar Falls like he was examining something distasteful. Catherine Walsh came with him. She was a handsome woman in her 40s, well-dressed and refined. When she saw Lucy, her eyes filled with tears. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "You look just like Beth when she was your age." Lucy was polite but distant. "Hello, ma'am. I'm your Aunt Catherine, darling. Your mother's sister. I've been searching for you for so long." They met in Judge Morrison's office that afternoon. Mr. Blackwood presented his case with smooth efficiency. Catherine Walsh had a beautiful home in Boston's finest neighborhood. Her husband was a successful merchant with connections throughout New England. They could provide Lucy with private tutors, music lessons, and social opportunities that would set her up for a prosperous future. "The child belongs with her blood family," Mr. Blackwood concluded. "We can offer her advantages that a simple mountain man, no matter how well-meaning, simply cannot provide." Judge Morrison turned to Jonas. "Mr. McKenna, how do you respond?" Jonas stood up slowly. He'd been practicing this speech for days, but now all his prepared words seemed inadequate. "Your Honor, I can't give Lucy fine clothes or fancy schools. I can't give her servants or carriages or trips to Europe. All I can give her is love and a home where she belongs and the promise that I'll always be there for her." He paused, looking at Lucy, who was sitting straight and tall in her chair. "But maybe that's not enough. Maybe she deserves more than an old mountain man can provide. If Lucy wants to go with her aunt, I won't fight it. All I want is for her to be happy." Judge Morrison nodded. "Lucy, you're old enough to have a voice in this decision. What do you want?" Lucy stood up and looked directly at her aunt. "Mrs. Walsh, I know you loved my mama, and I know you want to take care of me because of that love. That's a good thing." Catherine Walsh smiled hopefully. "But," Lucy continued, "Jonas saved my life. He's taken care of me for 3 years. He's taught me to be strong and brave and kind. He's given me a home and a family and a place where I belong. She turned to Judge Morrison. Your Honor, I appreciate what Mrs. Walsh wants to do for me. But Jonas is my papa now. Cedar Falls is my home. I want to stay here. Lucy, Catherine Walsh said urgently, you don't understand what you'd be giving up. In Boston, you could have anything you wanted. I already have everything I want, Lucy said simply. Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Walsh, I understand your desire to care for your sister's child. But Lucy has been legally adopted by Mr. McKenna, and she clearly wishes to remain with him. Furthermore, from my observations, she is thriving in his care. But the opportunities, Mr. Blackwood began. Mr. Blackwood, opportunities come in many forms. This child has found love, stability, and a sense of belonging. Those are worth more than money. Catherine Walsh was crying now. But she's all I have left of Beth. Lucy walked over to her aunt and took her hand. Mrs. Walsh, just because I can't live with you doesn't mean we can't know each other. You could visit or write letters. You could tell me stories about my mama when she was little. Catherine Walsh looked down at this wise, compassionate child and seemed to understand something important. You're right, she said softly. You're absolutely right. The legal proceedings were concluded quickly after that. Lucy would remain with Jonas in Cedar Falls, but she would also maintain a relationship with her aunt. Catherine Walsh promised to visit each summer and to write regularly. As they walked home from the courthouse, Lucy slipped her hand into Jonas's. Were you scared I might choose to go with her? She asked. Terrified, Jonas admitted. I would never leave you. You're my family. This is my home. Even though she could have given you so much more, Lucy stopped walking and looked up at him. Jonas, do you know what the most valuable thing in the world is? What? Knowing that someone loves you no matter what. Knowing that you have a place where you belong. Knowing that someone believes in you and will always be there for you. Jonas felt his throat tighten with emotion. And you have all that? I have all that with you. That evening, the whole town seemed to celebrate Lucy's decision to stay. Neighbors stopped by with food and congratulations. The children from her school made her a card signed by everyone in her class. As they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Jonas reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 3 years ago, he'd been a lonely man who thought love only led to pain. Now he was a father, a member of the community, and the happiest he'd ever been in his life. Jonas, Lucy said quietly, do you think we'll have more adventures? I'm sure we will. What kind of adventures are you hoping for? I want to help other people find families like you helped me find one. Jonas smiled at his daughter's generous heart. I think that's a wonderful idea. And maybe we could take trips to visit Aunt Catherine in Boston sometimes. I'd like to see the ocean. Maybe we could. Lucy leaned against his shoulder as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Do you think my first parents know how happy I am? I think they do. And I think they're grateful that you found someone to love you the way they wanted to. Do you think they would have liked you? Jonas considered this. I hope so. I hope they would have been glad that their brave little girl found someone who could keep her safe and help her grow into the amazing person she's becoming.